Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wall Street Hackers, one of the most interesting shows in the Pod TV network. We're one of the top-rated shows if you haven't seen this before. But we talk about interesting stories relating to Wall Street and some of the things that you just won't hear about, including a dividend stock of the week. So with that, we're going to bring in the hacker himself, who actually spent 17 years in Wall Street. But before that, he received his bachelor's degree in economics from UCLA, then his law degree from the University of Miami. And then on top of all that, he actually has an MBA in finance from NYU. Then 17 years in Wall Street. So we're going to get the inside story from the hacker himself. Let's bring in Peter Bennett. Peter, you're the hacker. So the thing is, we're going to push this thing over to you. We also have one of our co-hosts or moderators who's with us, who's the president of the IBM Pod TV network, Kim Calhoun, who's going to be joining us to also give us insights or listen to the insights that you have, Peter, on what investors should be doing today. We want to know what's happening today.
Good point. Today.
Turn over to Peter.
And today should always be looking not just in the short run, but in the long run, which is what my perspective is a lot more than the market. So we cover the markets first. So the Fed announced a 0.25% hike, and the markets were up a lot. NASDAQ up. I think NASDAQ's up again today. Again, more delusion because there was nothing positive that I saw in this report. And we'll get into this a little later, too, about what I see as negatives coming up in the news now a lot, comments, things like that. But the market had no reason to go that it was ecstatic, except for it didn't get a 0.5 point. But, any reason, it'll jump on the word the. Oh, look, they use the word the and everything's great. It's because they're living in the past, I believe, and this is a different period. In fact, Chairman Powell particularly said ongoing increases will allow a stance to return to inflation at 2% over time. Now, there's several points in that, but I thought that was the most relevant comment. One, it's not a positive message. He's saying ongoing rate increases. Number two, we're nowhere near 2% inflation. And history shows you have to be at or above the inflation rate, which was recently at 6.5%, to even control inflation. I think the Fed is slow walking it, and they've been behind the curve for over a year. And then finally, why believe the Fed anyway? I mean, the market reacts, oh, the Fed said this, the Fed said that. Well, they were wrong all last year. Or for a good part of it, they've been behind the curve. Some people were saying they needed to act much faster, and they didn't. So again, why is the market, just looking for anything positive? Well, we went into that in a different show, but basically the mentality, the history of the last 40 years when interest rates were low, there was a Fed put. So the market is actually now pricing in a 0.5% decrease by the Fed in the end of the year. And I think personally, I think, and I could be wrong, everybody has an opinion, and we're talking about the future, but I personally think it's almost impossible we'll get a 0.5% decrease, and the market is way off, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more 0.25 point increases, and they keep slow walking it. Eventually, they have to go really high, probably. I don't see any decreases this year. So we've been talking about since January 22, the 5 factors that have been driving inflation and driving down the markets. Very quickly, I'm going to cover these because I'm going to do a different take this week and pretend we're not talking about the past. I'm just talking about what we found this week. So I found quotes, I found evidence, and this is not a very positive report on what I'm going to tell you I found just this week. I think it's very convincing that the market shouldn't be going up. Again, that is delusional. So the 5 things we keep talking about for over a year. The Fed is behind the curve. I just mentioned they generally have to be at or above inflation to control it. Employment, 10 million job openings. We're not going to delve deeply into any of these because we have on so many shows. Extra stimulus money. Just last week, a financial CEO said that he thinks only half the money is gone of the extra stimulus. So that's still there. Housing prices, yeah, they're turning, but they're only down 2.5% in the third quarter. So yeah, it's turning, but there's a lot of other issues, and mainly energy. This is the bull in the China shop. There has been staggering underinvestment in energy, oil and gas, for since 2014, and when its prices start going down, but then all kinds of things happen, political things, and oil companies started spending 10% of their budgets on environmental projects like sequestration. So this is not just a bull in China shop for the short run, and everybody's predicting different things. Some people think it might go lower because we do have a supply, but right now, because it's been a warm winter and China's reopened, but not reopened yet, but China's reopening, and we still have a long winter. But you have to look at the future. China will reopen, as everybody knows, eventually. It's almost 100%. You say 100, and winters will be colder eventually. But we have a staggering underinvestment in the oil and gas. And these projects take 5 to 7 years. So when, on average, and some major projects take 15 years. So we're looking at gigantic potential shortages in energy down the road that could, I'm trying to be positive, but this could really affect society, American and the world, because we are not getting the investment that's needed. And oil and gas and coal even run the world, basically. So, yeah, exactly. 12.1 million trillion needed investment for energy. I don't know if that's right, but I think maybe over 50 years. But I do know that in energy was somewhere around 700 billion invested in around 2014, and now it's 300 something. It's like less than 50% of what they were doing. They're not developing the fields. They're not looking for the energy. So this is a big problem. So let's pretend for a moment, and there's a reason for this, that the other shows, these 5 points aren't there. And the reason I'm doing this is especially to point out that people self-select for information. And maybe I did that this week too. But if you're liberal, you look only at liberal news in general. Some don't. And red, if you're red, you look at red news. And you want to be justified in your positions. And people tend to look at and select the information. But so let's look at 8 different things that happened just in the last week, and that says the market maybe shouldn't be going up. Number one, the U.S. GDP, gross national product, GDP. I have to think of it, but the report just came up, and it showed consumers had the largest decrease in disposable income since 1932, the worst year of the Depression. The largest decrease in disposable income. This doesn't sound good for the economy. European Union, number 2, just banned a number of different Russian oil products. They had banned seaborne product, but now they're banning other products. This could drive energy a lot up. And in the end, energy is going up. The former CEO of Walmart said the following, quote, "America is in an inflationary loop, and it's not crazy. And he said, it's crazy now. We're stuck in this loop of wage inflation, product inflation, cost inflation. We have to cool this thing down." Yes, that's true. Barron's 128. The stock market has acted as if the Federal Reserve doesn't exist as it jumps out to a quick start to the year. What I've been saying forever. Barron's Daily 2-1 yesterday. Markets are pricing a fairy tale Fed ending. The dream can't come true. If the Fed behaves as the market expects and starts to cut rates by the end of the year, it will be because the economy is so weak, it needs a lot of support. Yes, well, just apply logic here. I mean, it has to get under control. 6, Piper Sandler's chief economist says, a looming recession will feel more like the 1970s than 2008. And that's my concern, that we had a 15-year inflationary cycle in in the 1970s, and this is looks a lot like it. Energy, unemployment situation, very similar to the 70s. You get into a loop. Goldman Sachs, number 7, quote, "Zero earnings growth will drive zero appreciation in the market in 23. And finally, Peter Schiff of Eurocapital, inflation will be higher by year end. He's not saying lower, higher. So it's still, you get all opinions of the different things. But in the end, more opinions, at least, are going to my perspective, the Wall Street hackers' perspective, than used to be. And I see a lot of opinions that are agreeing. So going on to the next segment, most interesting stories of the week segment, and 2 dating stories first. So there's a lot of women who are advocating going to Home Depot to find a husband, I should say. But personally, I'm not so sure that this is the best way. I think a dating site might give you more accurate selection parameters, but at least they know that the man can fix something, but it's just something. Number 2, a 100-year-old British woman said that the secret to her long and happy life was to, quote, avoid talking to strange men and you'll be fine. I thought that was humorous. And it could be true. It's not a good idea to talk to strange men. A hair cutter in Raleigh, North Carolina had a sign that said, quote, we guarantee shorter hair. Now that I can believe. I love that sign. It's so funny. Organized retail crime was up 26% in 21, and Lowe's has now successfully tested a system which they're going to install, which will deter crime because it includes chips and it includes servers, and will actually disable tools and other items that are stolen. So if you steal it, it won't work. Brilliant system for reducing crime. And that will probably become the norm because there is so much extra crime in the United States right now, for sure, for so many reasons. Another crime story, State Farm and Progressive are refusing to issue new insurance at all, just new insurance, on certain models of Hyundai and Kias because of the very high theft rates. And finally, for the interesting stories of the week, Bitcoin, which we've been on since beginning of 22, saying, it could be worth $1 million or it could be worth zero, but I think it's probably worth zero. So it just jumped like the delusional market, in my opinion, from 19,000 to about 23,500. But on the other side, it was at 69,000 last year. But humorously, I say, don't worry, because one, crypto is being taxed for the first time ever under government legislation that came out a little while ago. Number 2, it's no longer secret. It used to be considered secret under the same government legislation. Number 3, there are about 8,000 cryptos and growing. Number 4, and this is a real killer for crypto, I think. Many countries have, and I covered this on the show, developed, and many more are developing their own digital currencies. So you can have your a country-backed digital currency. So now you know who you're dealing with. But those who say, oh, don't worry, because Satoshi Nakamoto has promised not to issue any more Bitcoin, which is obviously the best known or one of the most famous cryptos. And then, so I say, wait a minute. Nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is or if he even exists. So this whole thing is very likely going to zero, and I would advise staying away from it. So what we'll do now is we'll do a fast advertisement, and then we'll be back with the dividend pick of this week and discussion of the week.
One of the things that business owners forget a lot is to prepare for their own retirement.
Hi, my name's Nick Palavita, and today I'm with a very special guest, a certified financial planner, a chartered retirement plan specialist, and president of National Pension Partners, Max Couliel. Max, tell me what you do at National Pension Partners.
Well, Nick, we help successful small businesses and professionals put together retirement plans that provide them the maximum retirement benefits and big tax deductions at the same time.
Well, how do you do this?
Well, we get on an internet conferencing system with the client. We review their goals, what they want to accomplish, and then put together strategies to help them in implementing a retirement plan that benefits them, not everybody else.
Well, that sounds really good. How much does this cost?
Well, it's really not bad because the first consultation is free. That allows us to go through and discover whether this strategy works for that business and for you as the business owner. and helping you maximize your retirement.
Well, Max, how do we get this free appointment?
It's really pretty simple, Nick. You can either go to our website below or call us at 877-252-1692, and then we can set up a time with either myself, Nick, or one of our other retirement plan specialists, another CPA or advisor in the office, to go over this with you and make sure it fits for you.
Hi, my name is Lewis Howe. I work with National Pension Partners, and I work with businesses to allow them to put the maximum away that they can for themselves and to save taxes.
Hi, I'm Brad Coyle, and I'm the brokerage manager at National Pension Partners. We're always analyzing plan fund choices in order to ensure the participant's success.
If you want more information on how we can help you and your business put more money away in a retirement plan than you ever thought possible, contact us at the website below or call us at 877-252-252.
Well, we're back.
All back. No.
Yeah. So what to do, a general approach. One, you have to own energy, in my opinion. I think we could be in the energy crisis over a lifetime, even much worse than the 70s. We could be. You need it as a hedge. And I'm giving a bonus dividend stock this week, one I've discussed before, but I increased my positions in that this week because it's a producer, an owner of land, I should say. But we'll get into that in a little while. You have to be I own right now, I'm about 29% energy. I've been in energy, and I love the pipelines, which I've discussed, because they're somewhat utility, they're defensive oriented, and a lot of them yield 8 to 10% or more. You have to own very defensive dividend stocks that can survive a recession, and REITs too, the very defensive REITs. I still like full state general obligation only bonds from states that I trust. They were paying 3.5% when I locked them in. Now they've gone up a little bit, so I don't know what their rate is. And also, I don't mind a 20-year Treasury. It was at around, I locked some at 4.5 and some at 4, I think. But because the thing is, right now the economy is in trouble, I believe, with inflation. But in a few years, inflation will peak, and at that point, it'll peak at a high level. And in the end, I think interest rates are going back even lower than they were like 7 years from now, because the government alone, all you have to know is this: the government's going to have to print more money than you could imagine. And we could go into that in another show, because of Medicare and Social Security, it's unfunded liabilities. So they're going to have to print so much money. So they're not going to want to pay interest. They can't pay interest on so much money that they're going to have to print. They can't possibly tax their way out of this. It would be all the money. They'd have to tax everybody. It still wouldn't cover it. So, and I mean everything, and it still wouldn't cover their unfunded obligations. And footnote there, I always mention this, other countries are in the same situation. So it's a worldwide crisis. All the countries I've looked at, Asia, Europe, South America, unfunded or poorly funded pension funds, and even worse on medical coverage, where they promised free medical care in a lot of countries to a very aging population. So where's this money coming from? Printing money. It's going to be the only solution. So dividend stocks of the week. First, I'm going to go into the bonus. So this week, actually on Monday, I added to BSM, Blackstone Minerals, and it actually increased its dividend today 5%. And it was already high, so now it's, I think, 11.6%. It is an MLP, so there's tax implications. There's a lot of advantages to MLPs. That's another show. Again, you can talk to your accountant, but a lot of times you get tax-free return of principal and depreciation. If you own an IRA, it's a little dangerous if you own a lot of it. That's UBTI. You can look that up. But I increased the allocation to 5% this week from 4, I guess, because of the high dividend. But also I was thinking, the pipelines are great and they'll keep paying and probably keep increasing their dividends. But because of my thesis that energy is going through the roof, this is the kind of thing you do want to own, because they're one of the largest owners of land in the country, Blackstone Minerals, for oil and gas production. And then they just lease it out to other people and pay a royalty. And they have almost no debt. This is what I love about it too. So I look at it and say, wait a minute, if it's paying 11 now, let's say oil and gas prices tank and they start, because they have almost no debt. So now I'm getting 6% dividend, as long as we're using oil and gas. But I think it's going the other way. So I really like them. So now back to my series of international dividend stocks that are defensive, BCE is a well-known Canadian company. 1/3% allocation again, because I'm only 11% stocks and REITs. But as stocks go, I like BCE. I also am about 1/3 in TELUS and TELNY, which I've discussed last week. They all have good dividends. They all have good cash flows. But I'm not doing too much in telecom, especially because of the issue of satellites. I mentioned this last week. There is a threat from a company called Starlink and maybe other satellites. Kim probably knows a lot about that. I see her nodding because she's an engineer. And so maybe there's a threat, maybe there isn't, from satellite communications, which could really endanger their cell phones and whatever. So you have to keep an eye on it. But the cash flows are great now, so it's going to be a long time until those cash flows can't cover the dividends. You have to watch it. So BC has a 5.7% dividend. Price to cash flow, which I always look at, is 7.5. So that's like a 13% cash flow yield. So they're easily covering the dividend. TD Ameritrade has their 5-year annualized growth of revenue at 1.5%. Not great, but at least they're growing. And the dividend, though, has been growing at 5.1% annualized. So healthy company for the 1% in telecom. All these REITs and stocks, there may be a time to add. I wish I could be more positive right now, but given the fact that I think we're in an energy crisis, an inflation crisis, and it's going to take a while to play out, there will be a time to jump further in, but not right now. So, discussion of the week. The question is politics in the U.S. more divided than ever? If so, why? If not, why not? And we'll start with our panel. It's their turn. So, Kim or Nick?
Nick?
You want me to jump into that one? Is politics in the United States divided?
Yeah, I want you to dive into that shark pool, not me.
No, wait. The question is more divided than ever, and if so, why? And if not, why? Why not?
I think it is. But if you want to know what's the root cause of this, it deals with certain politicians that will remain nameless because I don't want to give them any more publicity, and also deals with the media and how they treat politics. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of issues that Americans agree on, tons of them. But see, Peter, if you and I agree on something, it doesn't hit the media because that's not interesting.
That's true.
Okay?
That's another
so what happened? I'm serious. It's just the way it is.
You're right. If it's boring, right? Everybody agrees.
Okay. So they all agreed they need to build more roads and improve our transportation system. That got zero press, basically a little couple lines, but not interesting. All right. But if there's an issue that we disagree on, let's say abortion, it gets thrown in everybody's face. So what we have is a very complacent media. Now we're talking about ownership. 90% of media in the United States is owned by 5 companies. Oh. So from what you see and you read, you have to imagine they have 5 companies that are pulling everybody's string right now. So you got a real big problem with the perception that's out there. So they can take it and distort it. And one problem I have when I listen to a story, I'm listening to it now, is how bad has this story got distorted before it came to me. A simple one is the Trump statement. They said, go down and peacefully protest at the Capitol. Mm-hmm. That I read in the transcripts, right? It was omitted by the press. Instead, they stop it. You can watch how they do the video. Go down and protest, and they stop it right there. Mm-hmm. And then he used the word peacefully, cut it out. So what happens is we are being manipulated by these 5 companies because
absolutely manipulated is a good word.
Yeah. So it's not like we have a lot of disagreements. We have a lot of manipulations.
Very good. Yeah, that's great point.
That's my thought on this.
No, that's great thoughts, Nick. I had 2 reasons, and you just gave a third. Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
And I have to wholeheartedly agree with Nick on the fact that we are still very well divided. I agree that it is the use of gaslighting, as a lot of people use that term, of the media. And I think the divide is intentional, because if you keep us divided, you can continue manipulating your own causes. So I think that they know what they're doing. I think people in general, we all want the same thing, right? We want sustainability, stability. We want to be able to budget our finances so that we can live a comfortable life. But the government gets the right to go and print the money when they screw up. We don't have that. So I think not just the media who uses this as a means to make more media shows and to get more attention and to have more things to talk about. But I also think the politicians intentionally do this gaslighting and dividing us in order to manipulate their own priorities behind our back.
Exactly.
And also Peter, to raise money. By the way, I listened.
Yes. You're taking all my points away.
I know. I listened very intensely to what you said, and here's something that you didn't say, but it runs on one of our other shows with Dennis Stearns, who's $1 billion money manager. You'll see he does an economic forecast. But here's what he showed that I thought was very interesting, which I haven't fact checked him, but he's a pretty smart guy and he pretty well has his facts. 50% of our $30 trillion debt is due within the next 2 years. It needs to be refinanced.
Oh, I'm not worried about the 30 trillion. I'm worried about the potential 100 to 200 trillion
I know that
liabilities for Medicare.
But Peter, you have to imagine in the short term, the next 2 years, the government has to refinance because they have a lot of their bonds are long term.
They will.
I made a mistake.
You know what? This is
2 years short term.
You know what?
They're going to get killed when they refinance it.
Wait, let me jump in though. But I'll tell you something. Okay. This is the kind of story that I don't think is, because it's the kind of story a media will pick up, and then I'll get into my reasons. But it's not that exciting. They always come through, and sometimes they don't meet the budget right away, and then but they get some money on the side, they keep things running, or maybe it shuts down for a week and then they do it again. This has been going on for years. It's not going to blow up because they don't want to destroy the credit of the government and the United States. But it's the kind of story that they love. The media loves it every day. Oh, because there's controversy. It's like, oh no, now the real threats are nothing. So you did do a point, you two, but that's because you're both so intelligent. You both took some of my points away to a point. But so here's how I break it down. Well, number one, the political parties, and again, this was mentioned to a point. But look, the Democrats and the Republicans raise money off of major issues where they can push their side. So they do this all the time. There are letters and everything. Plus, the most active people. The people who are going to go out and actually knock on doors for you are the people who are the extremists. So they play to their extremists. The real culprit, though, is the media. And by the way, the politicians, I think, are very influenced by the media, because I see a lot of the politicians talking as if they've never seen the other side at all. And they seem to believe it. They're like a blue politician or a red politician is going, oh, this is all the arguments, as if they don't know the other side. So they're getting their information from the media, too. So the thing with the media is, first of all, they have a huge incentive to just satisfy their audience. So if you're a blue media outlet, and Nick pointed out, there's only 5 major companies, and they're all aligned. So they're just pumping out the same information. And by the way, most of those, like maybe 4 of them, are going to put out the exact same information because they're on the blue side and one is on the red side. So that anything they own is going to put they're going to put it out. So they want to keep their audiences happy and watching. Because let's say I'm a red, perspective person on a lot of issues, although personally I'm mixed on a lot of issues. But let's say I'm red and I'm watching blue, or blue and watching red. If I'm watching my own stations and all of a sudden they're giving me stuff that I don't like, maybe I'll stop watching. It's like, this isn't making me feel good. So they're playing to it. So there have been studies, huge amounts of blue especially are bad, but red too. But sometimes it's like 95% of reporting in some studies on blue stations, liberal stations, was negative on Trump. Really? 95%? Is that balanced? But then you go to Fox and it's like 80%, 85% on the red side. It's like, really? Aren't these complex issues? These are complex issues. And it's not pure red and pure blue. It's gray. It's orange and green. It's not black and white, but they portray it that way. And the bottom line there is follow the money. Whether it's the politics or the media, it's where the money is. So the problem is, in our information age, especially with the media, the money is with being extreme. Mm-hmm. So it's really bad in a way. Recently CNN, which was extremely blue, is saying that they're going to move towards more of a reporting stance, the new owners. But yeah, exactly. So far, I have seen a little bit more movement that way, but I still see a lot of slant one way. And, fine. But I personally would like to see both sides neutral and really a more intelligent, viewpoint in terms of, getting to both sides of issues and the controversies. So it's a tough situation, and, who knows where it'll go if there's a real solution, but maybe eventually people will, demand it, or maybe the issues will work themselves out when people realize neither side is totally right on these issues. So unfortunately, we're running out of time. It always runs so fast on the Wall Street Hackers.
Yes, it does.
Watch our show at 1:00 every Thursday, starting at 1 on.
That's the live one.
Well, live, and then
And then we have the rest of the week.
good point, exactly. And then, or you can watch it anytime during the week on the podcasts and Roku and all the other channels. Thanks for watching. And okay, let's see if we can do this, Kim. So say it quickly, so we try to get it. Kim and I are working on this. Get healthy,
so you get wealthy.
No, we're still.